listen, expect the Spanish Inquisition. It's head first only television.
Good evening, and HFO is rather tired this evening. Not exactly sure why, but it's just been one of those weeks. I think I'm still catching up on sleep after a very, very busy weekend. But Ryako Music, good evening. Welcome to the show. It's okay, same, says Mel. Yeah, I don't know. It's just been weird here. The weather has been ridiculous today. I had to go out and get some stuff for the bank holiday weekend, so barbecues await. Barbecues in this weather? Check this out. If I just switch to the weather forecast for the next 24 hours round here. Look at that. Thunderstorm predicted at 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. and 1 o'clock in the afternoon as well. And then it rains for the rest of Friday. Saturday doesn't look too bad. Sunday's just gloomy, and so's Monday. Array of Emotions says, rain is good, we like rain. Yeah, but you're Belgian. I don't know. It's not the best of climates at the moment. And I went to the supermarket, and driving home, the roads were covered in runoff from the edge of the Cotswolds, which is just up the road from where I am. There was mud everywhere, and the cloud was actually lower than the top of the escarpment where the William Tyndale monument is, which is a big monument it's within sight of the M5 if you're travelling past Michaelwood or Micklewood services. A monument to William Tyndale, who translated the Bible into English, which really pissed off the church to the point where they hung, drawn and quartered him. But that's another table. Array of Emotion says, the water table is so low here, I think we qualify as in a drought. Oh dear, that's not good. It's been very wet here over the last 3 weeks or so. Had quite a few decent thunderstorms, as you will know if you've listened to one of the tracks that I came up with a couple of weeks ago, which was called Built on Sand, which featured an uninterrupted recording of about 8 minutes of continuous rolling thunder. I've never heard a storm like it. It was amazing. Rev Emotion says, it's a structural issue, too much concrete. Ah, yes. And this is one of the troubles that we get in this country more often now, because with families having more than one car, the way they cope with the parking situation is to pave over the front garden, which means when it rains, all that lovely water that used to soak into people's lawns just runs off into the street and flash floods. Yeah, not good. Anyway, welcome. If you're watching this on Twitch, please follow me. I'm trying to build up my follower level, which is doing all right, actually, at the moment. I'm well into double figures now. Want to try and get it to 50 by the new year, so please spread the word. I went for an eye test this week and ended up talking about live streaming to the optics lady, because her daughter-in-law does it and basically models clothes online streaming, and that's her profession now. Rev Emotion says, I like the new camera angle. I think it's kind of just, I'm caught the camera mount with my elbow when I was adjusting the light, so it's not intentional. But if it's artistic, then hey, works for me. If you're watching the recording of this on YouTube, then hello, you get the edited version, which has all the ums, ahs, hesitation, repetition, and drifting off the topic of conversation, hopefully edited out, but probably not. So please follow me, or whatever you do on YouTube. Subscribe, I think it is on YouTube, isn't it? And click the like button and the little notification bell, please. It all helps my analytics. I got another email from YouTube this week, which is the second one in the month that starts off with a little animation of fireworks and things, and just the 3 letters OMG. So I continue to do weird things with my YouTube stream that they obviously weren't expecting me to do, which is nice. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. What else we got? Yes, I had a weird sort of week. After Sunday, I was a bit sort of bleh, really not feeling it on Monday at all. So just sort of let it slide for a day, vegged out a bit. Ryako Music says I took a slug day. Yeah, that was me on Monday, really. It really wasn't feeling it. And then the weirdest thing on Tuesday was that I sat down in this chair and started working on music. And I mean, I've still got the brace on the elbow. The good news is that it's now just feeling a bit twingy rather than outrageously sore or, agonizing stabbing pains. So I think it's healing a bit, touch wood. Not touching guitar for a few more days. And that's kind of why you haven't seen anything new from me on 5090. Because I've actually been very prolific. I just haven't posted anything since, well, when was the last time I posted something on 5090? He said, looking at my profile, let's go to screen 1. So here's me. Oh, I did the movie trailers. So 3 days ago, 3 days and 3 hours was the last time that I posted anything on 5090. Ryako Music says twingy is a step up. You're damn right it is. It does feel a lot better, and I actually got an almost decent night's sleep last night. My sleep rating was average, which is a huge improvement over the bad it's been for most of the last 5 weeks. Okay, we've kind of... Did we cover... No, I guess we didn't cover the every movie soundtrack trailer ever. So I'll play you that in a minute. But while I'm here, let me just check. I just want to see. Oh, look at that. So I'm nearly at the double century in commenting on songs on 5090, which is a huge part of taking part in 5090. There are a lot of people that I've become friends with now on 5090, and we cheer each other on. That's kind of the deal. And if you're new to 5090, we'll cheer you on too. Big shout out to Neil, who's a regular former. You will know him on formers. I Hamur. That's Neil Williamson to you and me. And he's just signed up for 5090. Nearly at the end of August, but hey, you've got to join in the fun. So greetings, Neil, if you're watching. So yeah, so I just need to do one more comment. So I'll do that later on when I finish tonight. But yeah, purple patch, very definite purple patch in terms of what I've been doing. So let's go to every film trailer soundtrack ever. You may remember I'd kind of started that on Sunday's show. I actually posted a shout out for help on Twitter which said, okay, if you're going to put together a movie trailer, what are the cliches that I've got to follow? And I got some really good ones. We'll skip over the in a world where, well, you know, the voice of God, the late, great Don LaFontaine, he basically changed the format of movie trailers, and it was all one guy. Ryako Music says Purple Patch. Purple Patch is an expression my grandmother used to use, I think. It basically means intensely creative and productive, which took me completely by surprise. And the songs that I did on Tuesday, both of them I listened to afterwards and goes, is that me? And I think what drove it is the fact that with this, I can't play bass or guitar. So I've had to completely change my work ethic this week to get around the fact. And I think it unlocks something. Mel says, can you use Purple Patch in a sentence? Well, I mean, it is literally. I had a bit of a dry spell, but now I'm in the middle of a purple patch, creatively speaking. Does that kind of make sense? Right. Let's start with every film trailer soundtrack ever, which is the thing that I posted that I said about a couple of weeks ago. So we skipped Don LaFontaine, but the other things we had, of course, everybody wanted the Inception Hans Zimmer huge brass, you know, all the brass section at once. And I think it was Vesper actually suggested the Vox Dei, the voice of God choral organ as well. So, yep, that's in as well. And why don't I just shut up and play it to you? So here's my interpretation of every film trailer, soundtrack or score ever. Ryako Music says, what kind of movie are you envisioning for this? All of them? Did you like the way I went from one? Well, I went through all the time signatures, basically. So I started off with 4/4, then 3/4, then 4/4, then back to 12, then on to 12/8, and then who knows. So I people said, oh, you got the Hans Zimmer horns, but actually I realized about 2 days after I posted it that horn refrain. So let me just play you that. Come on, see who spots the reference where this actually is from. Mel nails it in one. Yeah, it is. It's The Matrix. It's like, oh shit. Which I hadn't realised when I was doing it. I thought, oh, that sounds vaguely familiar. And then when I listened back to it, it was like, oh God, it's The Matrix. So, hey-ho. So probably not much chance of getting this in a single. I've had a bunch of comments on stuff this week on 5090, and they've all said, this would be brilliant in a sync library. Synchronization libraries are basically music libraries that sell pieces of music to television and film producers. And it's something that I've been interested in, and I know there are several people who take part in 5090 Inform. Hello, Amanda, who actually do sell music for sync licensing. So I need to pick their brains, and I've put in a submission to join a Facebook group on sync licensing, because it appeals to me. I mean, I might be rubbish at it, but at least it will give me something to focus my creative pursuits on once 5090 is over. And apart from anything else, I just love making music with sort of orchestral arrangements, which is something that has astonished me, because there is no way, even 6 months ago, if you'd say, oh yeah, you're going to be doing loads of orchestral arrangements with string sections and horn sections and everything else. Really? Ryako Music says, hit me up with it. I'd love to do that. Yeah, and you'd be bloody good at it as well, mate. I was thinking, listening to that now with my weedy little synthesizer choir, how much better that would sound with that Olympus elements that Ryako was showing us on her stream last night. So Ryako streams every Wednesday night at 2100 CET, isn't it, Mel? 8 o'clock UK time. Well worth tuning in. So please do go over. And yeah, most of the folks who crop up here crop up on Mel's stream as well. This has to be said. Ryako Music says, I am not bad at orchestral things. Indeed, that's putting it mildly. So yeah, there's lots of strings, lots of all sorts of other stuff. I even put in a riser and a couple of explosions and fireworks, and the thunder at the end is actually a couple of different fireworks. I went and had a look I just Googled explosion sound effects libraries, and I found about 5 gigabytes of data. The amount of downloading I've done this week is insane. I also discovered there are some more free Ableton packs that I hadn't previously availed myself of, so I've been downloading those as well. So there's a lot more stuff in the little column on the left side of my Ableton things here. So Spectral Textures used to be on sale for 25 quid or something. I noticed this weekend it's on sale for £0. So I paid £0 and got a receipt for £0 from Ableton, and have been playing with the Spectral Textures Ableton Live Pack, which is rather funky. But anyway, that is enough film trailer soundtracks ever. 29 is a work in progress, so we'll skip 29. We'll come back to that when that's ready for the listener. Although I'm sure Mel and David have already heard it, seeing as Mel's been working on it with me. Right, save changes. No. Wait for my machine to do its thing. One thing with some of these new packs, be warned. I mean, I've got a machine that's only 18 months old. I actually got the disk drive light, the little D in the corner here, up in the top, just up there. I actually got that to flash red with one of these sample packs this week, which impressed me because I've not managed that before. Right, so on to the purple patch. And this is the first of 2 tracks that I wrote on Tuesday after feeling completely burnt out and at a complete creative dead end. And Mel was saying how she'd had to detune her electric guitar down by 12 semitones or an octave, if you want old money, and was complaining that she couldn't get a decent bass guitar sound. Well, Mel, this is for you, because if you download and install Cakewalk from BandLab, which is free and available on macOS as well as Windows, as far as I remember. I checked this last week, didn't I? I did. So, me with me arm in a brace, I thought, as I looked through my plugins, because I'd installed Cakewalk, and Cakewalk uses standard VST2s and VST3s, I'd put them in my standard 32-bit and 64-bit VST folders, which won't mean a thing if you're using a DAW, but if you are using a DAW, then it's pretty straightforward and they all do the same thing. So, of course, when I fired up Ableton and it did its scan to see if I'd added any more VSTs, it found some. And in particular, it found this one, which is called SI Bass Guitar. So I thought, well, I can play the push, so that will stop me knackering my elbow by playing either the 9-string or the JD or the Ibanez Blazer, all of which are fairly heavy and would result in me knackering my elbow still further. So I dropped SI bass guitar onto a MIDI track because it's a MIDI instrument and opened up the interface, and this is what I saw. So if you're not aware, Toontrack just brought out Easy Bass, which is a companion to Easy Keys and Easy Drummer, which is the smaller version of the drum package that I use, which is called Superior Drummer. Turns out Cakewalk beat them to the punch because they have this. All right, you only get one real bass guitar, which looks suspiciously like a precision bass, judging by the pickup configuration and the shape of the body. And what it does is it has a whole bunch of grooves like Toontrack has with Easy Drummer and everything else. So if you just click on one of these grooves, it plays the bass guitar. And this is what it sounds like. Or Groove It, I think, was the one I ended up actually using. Well, I double-clicked on that and thought, oh, yes. Ryako Music says, Jesus, that sounds so real. I know, right? It's free. I mean, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but the strings actually wiggle when it plays, and it tells you what the notes are. So that riff, thank you, Cakewalk, that unblocked me completely because I thought, right, bass guitar riff, I'm going to use that. And with a bit of processing and a bit of compression and a bit of overdrive, I dropped it onto a MIDI track, and with a bit of treatment, it sounds like this. So, without further ado, and given the fact that, as you can see, the guitar submix level here is completely empty, it was a question of, okay, well, what am I going to use instead? It's going to be BBC Symphony Orchestra Discover from Spitfire Audio, isn't it? Because that's free as well. So all the stuff that's going on here, apart from the drums, which are Superior Drummer, was free, which blows my little mind. So, yeah, shut up, Chris, and just play the track.
These days the news is so compelling. I turn on the TV with a sigh. It's just some fat old white guy yelling. Does crazy things but won't say why. I don't believe the line he's selling.
Thank you. And if you're wondering, I did drop vocal synth on the vocals, but that's me. It's not treated or pitch shifted or anything else. Being tired means that my voice drops, and I can push it down an octave below what I normally sing. And so if I solo it and turn all there is a bit of reverb on that. So this is.
These days, the news is so compelling.
So, yeah, channeling my Tom Waits today. But vocal synth is a tool for processing audio, as its name would suggest, made by Isotope. And I haven't really played with it that much. But what it is a combination of a vocoder, something called BioVox, CompuVox, the old Peter Frampton talk box, but you don't have to stick a tube in your mouth, and Polyvox. So all that this is really doing, and it's really, really down in the mix, is adding even more gravel to the gravel I've already got. So if I solo it,
Double down on hating.
so really it makes me sound like a Dalek with a sore throat.
'Cause he gets off on all the human cry.
But I just thought I'd drop it in the background to just give a bit of grit and a bit of buzz, a bit like having a parallel track on the guitar with a bit of overdrive, and drop it right back in the mix, and it just gives a bit more presence to the vocals. So I was chuffed to bits with that, and that was literally everything just came out of that bass guitar riff. So the joy of having new toys to play with, especially free new toys, because that single bass lick ended up with inspiring me to record a track that's over 7 minutes long. And there's no choruses other than that there's more than meets the eye. It's just verses, and it's just the story, and as Ryako Music says, lolling at the lyrics. Who else would it be about, really? And it's a slow build, and I do like the slow build. It's something I've done off and on over the years, where you start off with, maybe guitar, maybe just the bass, maybe drums, and then just add everything, including the kitchen sink, and the tubular bells, and the timpani, and the full orchestra now. So, yeah, watch out, because I'll be doing a lot of this sort of stuff. It's funny, I've spent the last 2-3 days just going back and picking at it all. And this is something that I normally do when I'm putting an album together, but I don't normally do during 5090. But again, and I'll explain why I've got all these on hold in a minute with the next track. But because I've got all these tracks on hold, it's giving me the opportunity to, normally when I'm trying to get to sleep, I'll just put my headphones on and my little MP3 player and just listen to the tracks from a novice's ear, as it were, or a producer's ear, and go, okay, yeah, don't like that. Oh, there's too much reverb on the flute, which was one of the things that I tweaked on this. Or, yeah, those trumpets are playing the wrong melody, or the cellos are too loud, and stuff like that. So this is about the 6th or 7th revision of the track, which is something I do not do during 5090. And this hasn't even been uploaded to 5090 yet, so I'll probably do that at the weekend maybe. But I've just really enjoyed being able to sit back and just say, yeah, I don't like that line. Going to change that. So I changed a couple of the vocal lines on this one. I changed an entire verse on the next track. I've been back to them and picked them apart and added bits and pulled bits out. I mean, you can see in the synth, there is literally just, in fact, I can't even remember what that is. There's 2 notes, and that's all the synths on this track, and that's the synclavier. So, which is the Arturia V collection synclavier. All it's doing is a very, very, very faint sound effect. So if I solo it, this is all that my vast array of synthesizers were pressed into doing on this track. There you go. All these synths. That's all I could come up with for a synth line. Good evening to French Doge. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Don't worry about being late. It's good of you to swing by. So, yeah, as should be expected by this point in 5090, I dropped into the full BBC Symphony Orchestra Discover, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. There's timpani, there's marimba, there's tubular bells. The strings, I'm kind of trying to avoid just the legato voicings. So, for instance, the violins on this are pizzicato for the first violins. And the second violins are, is it tremulando? So a bit of a different feel, and altogether it just sounds huge.
Needed support to multiply.
So there we go. And happy birthday to the French Doge, it's his birthday today. So happy birthday. Another August birthday. It was mine on the 11th. It was my brother's on the 12th. It was my sister's on the 20th. It's my brother's birthday tomorrow. It's somebody else in this chat's birthday a couple of days after that. So, yeah, hooray for August birthdays. Okay, let's just wrap up this with one other thing that I love doing on vocals when I want a bit more character in them rather than just singing. I mean, this isn't singing. Tom Waits doesn't sing, he performs. So for the voice on this, I use Ableton's 60-second reverb on a parallel track. So it's just taking the verse vocals before the effects chain, switch it to on, otherwise you won't hear anything. Parallel track, brute compression, distort the mids, and then a 60-second reverb. And if I solo it, what you get is ridiculous. So it just adds a bit of spatial awareness to the context of the vocals. But it's a track I've used to some extent or another for a couple of years because I'm all about the reverbs. I mean, come on, look at the A and B sends in here. A send is, of course, Native Instruments bonkers reverb realm. And I guess I've been using Valhalla Supermassive, thanks to Januarius on or IA on 5090, or Yuha if you're watching, who told me about the Valhalla's Supermassive. They've also got a phasery thing, I think, called Space Modulator, which is also mad. And I'm using it on everything. They're in my default template now as a, because who needs echo or distortion or delay or anything else on a send? I just have all the reverbs on my sends. So, yeah, as I say, from 0 to 60, just thanks to a single bass riff, just thanks to that bass pattern. And it sounds hugely convincing. Ryako Music says, oh, I stuck Valhalla on those freestyle vocals on that Transcend Dance track list. Ah, yeah. And they shone. They really did shine. Okay, so that was the first of the 2 tracks in my purple patch on Tuesday. The second one, I kind of ended up with a title. I think I was reading a news item and it just said Sight Unseen. And I thought, oh, that's a good title. So this time, rather than a bass line, it was literally 2 words that triggered me into saying, okay, what could this be? And again, no guitar, no real bass at all. This time I'm still using the SI bass from Cakewalk, which installs itself in your VST folders if you install Cakewalk. Remember, Cakewalk's free. So you get a free virtual bass guitar that you can use with your DAW of choice. And in fact, while I'm mentioning it, there is also a set of drums, an electric piano, and a string section that install at the same time. Haven't used those yet because BBC Symphony Orchestra, but I'm going to probably try using those this week and see what they sound like. Didn't use the electric piano here, but you remember on Sunday I was flirting with the Arturia Fender Rhodes emulation of the Stage 73 piano, this little thing. So I thought, oh yeah, I could do with some Fender Rhodes. And the Fender Rhodes is, incidentally, the electric piano that Angelo Badalamenti plays all those beautifully chorusy chords at the beginning of the Twin Peaks theme tune. And Badalamenti tends to compose on the Fender Rhodes, and the extras in the Twin Peaks box set has him at his Fender Rhodes explaining how he played such and such a thing to David Lynch, and David Lynch, absolutely transfixed, said, yes, that's it. You know, to work with a director who shares your vision to that degree. So Ryako Music says, Cakewalk is giving us some gifts, damn it. Indeed. So if you've got a tinkly Fender Rhodes and you're my sort of age, there are perhaps 2 pieces of music that you're going to play on a Fender Rhodes or going to emulate on a Fender Rhodes. One of them is actually referred to in the preset of the Fender Rhodes that I'm using. So if I close that down and enable that track, so Pink Floyd's Sheep from Animals, which if you've not heard it, check it out. It's an amazing track. The other one is, the other Fender Rhodes patch, because I've doubled it because of width and because the patches behave in different ways, is just called Awake, and that is a little bit less mellow, a little bit shoutier. and huge reverb, of course, because I've dropped Valhalla on it. So if Sheep is one of the tracks that everybody with a Fender Rhodes wants to play, the other one starts off like this. If I solo that. So yeah, I'm a complete shameless tribute to Riders on the Storm by the Doors. And that was it. I started playing. I thought, oh yeah, that riff will do. Dropped Superior Drummer on it as a drum track, and off I went. So remember, this is after doing that first track. Same day, still tapping into something really weird because I'm not using the bass, not using a real bass or a real guitar, and using the push this time for the bass line, which was literally no more than that. And the result of the whole thing, if I play everything with nothing soloed, sounds like this. fade to silence. So chuffed to bits with that one in particular, even more than the last track. It's that end segment after the final chorus, which is why I left. I mean, it runs for nearly a minute and a half because I didn't want to stop, and I kept on going, oh, I'll just cut and paste and do and that fade's too short, that too shallow, so I'll do a longer fade. And of course that's gonna have guitar on it. A very, very mellow sort of nod to Richard Wright, who was Pink Floyd's late lamented keyboard player, a very, very undervalued member of the band, who was treated like an employee during the post Waters era, which was outrageous. Really, they shouldn't have done that. But you know, that's not my call. And of course, he's no longer with us. But his style of playing, just very gentle, very laid back, and everything else, just a joy to sort of try and capture that sort of vibe in something I'm doing. And didn't use the push for the electric piano on this. That was all done on the Korg M3 using it as a MIDI controller. DeFrench Doge says, how do you make your drum track sound so human? Well, I cheat is the short answer. I use Toontrack's Superior Drummer, which is a monster of a drum programming tool. So you may be familiar with Easy Drummer, which is what I started with. I think I bought a piece of kit, and in fact, I know what it was. It was my Novation Launchpad. Came with Easy Drummer 1 Lite and Ableton Live 8 Lite. I thought, well, that's quite interesting, because I don't know if you can see over in the corner here, I was putting all my stuff together on a hard disk recorder. It's an old, it's very old now, actually. It's over a decade old, Korg D3200. So it's a 32 track hard disk based recorder with a mixer and everything built into it. Lovely piece of kit, still use it. And it came with this software. So I installed it on the machine that I got in here, and that was it. So I went from Easy Drummer, I think Easy Drummer 2 came out shortly afterwards, bought so many of the Easy Drummer expansion packs. In fact, the only person I know who's got more expansion packs than me is Mr. Sapient, who I think at one point had all of them, and there are lots. So Superior Drummer 3 lets you control bits that you control in Easy Drummer 2, but there's a lot more of it as well. And you can mix and match, you can pull out cymbals, you can add different drums, you can build your own kit. The iterations and the different sound sources, as you can see, there are a lot of different miking positions, so you can radically change the sound of a kit just by changing the mic positions. It also comes with a metric ton of MIDI grooves that you can use. And that's why they all sound human, is because they are human. I didn't program them on the push. They're actually performed by a bunch of people. So this is probably, I think, a jazz groove. So it's probably Norman Garsha, who's playing the drums. And you'll notice I'm using a drum kit played with brushes rather than with sticks. I love brushed drums, especially in a track, the sort of contemplative track that's not particularly shouty like this. very, very much my sort of thing. And I mean, you listen to some of the stuff on it, it's just gorgeous. So, playing in twos. I mean, what's not to like? It's like having a real drummer in the room. And some of the drummers they've used for these packs are quite famous drummers. So Gene Hoglan's there. The Funk Masters was the one. Where is it? So I've got all it uses all the Easy Drummer. So you can upgrade from Easy Drummer to Superior Drummer. You get all the functionality. You can use all your old kits. You can use all your old EasyX libraries. So there you go. Funk Masters. So it's got Jabbo Starks and the one and only Clyde Stubblefield, who was James Brown's drummer for a long time. And I mean, his stuff played on brushes is plus I really amped the room noise up in the mixer on that. Didn't mean to close it. So if we go back to the mixer, you can see for the overheads. So there's a mic specifically. If I just there we go. So there are a bunch of overhead mics here. So it's the overhead dynamic and the overhead condenser mics. I really pushed up because what I wanted to do was to pick up the cymbal use in the play out, because it gets very lively on the cymbal I'm using Fusion Grooves add-on pack. So if I just solo the drums, so all that just using the bell in the middle of the cymbal, I wanted to really bring that out. So I really ramped up the overhead mics that are on the drum kit just to get, and it completely changes the character of the drums as a result of doing that. There's also, the drums are dropped into, surprise, surprise, Reverb 2, which is, you guessed it, Valhalla Supermassive again. So it gives it that sound, that feel of being in a big space. So just adore those sort of drums. And there is one other thing I'll share with you on this track that I absolutely adore. And once again, it's a free instrument. Okay, so this is one that I've raved about for donkey's years. And even the mighty Brian, Mr. Eno, uses one. Now, Brian Eno was a famous user of the original Yamaha DX7. The Yamaha DX7 hardware synth, back in the days when I was in a band playing the Juno 60 there and the JX3P live, I would borrow a DX7 to get the electric piano and the tinkly sounds. And God knows why I didn't buy myself one. It's the one musical instrument that I really, really wish I'd bought the physical instrument. And okay, I've got several virtual DX7s. The Arturia V collection has a very nice Yamaha DX7 in it, and it will load the system exclusive ROMs that you can find kicking around on the internet. But DXED is you actually download it from GitHub. That's how nerdy DXED is. And it's a Yamaha DX7 emulation, and it will load the standard DX7 ROMs in it. And I found there's a ROM in the standard, first cart that you get, which is called TRW. And don't know why I'd never come across it before, but it's got a that's interesting programming. It's got a very, very distinctive sound that, to me, reminds me of an obscure musical instrument that I have gone on about, on this show before, called the Ond Martino, which was... It was invented and became used probably about the same time as the theremin. So you're talking the 1930s, 1940s onwards. The Ond Martino had a keyboard, so you could play it like a normal organ or piano, but it used electronic tone generators. It also had a little wire that ran the length of the bottom of the keyboard with a ring on it, and it was effectively an early analogue of the ribbon controller that this has and that the Korg M3 has. And it produces very, very spooky noises, just as the theremin did. If you grew up in the UK, you probably watched shows like Thunderbirds or Captain Scarlet or Stingray or UFO, which were all productions by legendary puppet master, super marionation pioneer Jerry Anderson. And up until the end of the first season of Space 1999, when they spectacularly fell out, Jerry Anderson used a composer called Barry Gray to produce all his music. And Barry Gray actually had his own real Ond Martino and used it a lot. So all the spooky sort of noises, particularly in Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons. So the original Mysterons theme, which is what Portishead give more than a nod to in their track Mysterons, was originally played on an Ond Martino. And TRW, this track or this patch on the DX7 DexEd emulator, especially if you drop it into Supermassive and Realm, sounds gorgeously like an Ond Martino. So, I mean, that is the Mysterons theme, isn't it? Shall I turn that up? It's a bit quiet. Try again. It's just so lush. So I fell in love with this particular patch, and I've now thrown my levels all out of kilter, so apologies for that. So just catching up on the chat. Why didn't I think of using Midi Grooves before? It had helped stepping out of my comfort zone. Yeah, I'll tell you what, as Ryako Music says, using drum Midi grooves, and there are so many available for download live, on the internet for free, and there are some really good ones that you can buy as well. They will change your songwriting. Woo, that's nasty. Turn the volume down on the monitors. Yeah, you can hear in the stuff that I was writing for February album writing month back in the early days. If the stuff that I'd been doing before I got the D3200 and everything else was about there, and once I'd installed Ableton, I sort of went up to about there. But when I started using Toontrack, Easy Drummer 2, and then Superior Drummer, you know, what my stuff sounded like in terms of being convincing, I'm not talking about songwriting, I'm talking about just getting the sound of a physical band playing, which is what I had in my head that I wanted my stuff to sound like. Then I went from down here to about there. And with Superior Drummer, it's like up to about there now, and all this stuff, you know. But, you know, the ceiling's a long way up here rather than the bed, which is just out of camera shot, I have to say, in this. Ryako Music says, I love that song, Mr. Ons. Also, Portishead is from Bristol, right? Yes. Well, Portishead is actually a little village next to the docks on the Bristol Channel, which is where all the cargo ships come in and spit out their cars from various manufacturers. So if you go over the big bridge over the Severn, which is where the Avon, which is where Bristol port itself sits on, you can just see thousands and thousands and thousands of new cars that have just been delivered, just sitting in car parks by the bridge. But Portishead is a small village, and that's where the gang were from. And some mates of mine, hello Phil, if you're watching this at some point, used to rehearse in a rehearsal studio in Bristol for their jazz band. They're bloody good. So they would often share rehearsal space with another band who weren't really into the whole band thing. They just liked making music. But if you book a rehearsal space in this rehearsal studios, you had to have a name. So they would always end up being booked into this rehearsal studios as that lot from Portishead. So, of course, they ended up adopting that as their name. An absolutely stunning band. I've seen them live several times. And, yeah, they're also, Adrian Utley and Will Gregory, both huge synth nerds. So, you know, what's not to like? But, so this particular track, I just love the Ond Martino sound that this particular patch gives. So I would expect this to crop up quite a lot in subsequent pieces of music that I write this year. A couple of other things I'll just chat about very briefly. So what have we got here? Oh, look, Vocal Synth 2. I used it again on this track, but again, it's not really doing an awful lot. So if I solo it, in fact, I can't even remember. So this is Tuesday. I can't remember what I did with Vocal Synth on this track, so let's find out. I think it was to do with the harmonies on the vocals, on the chorus. And can't pick it up because let's change that to pre-effects. Let's do that again. It should do it. All right, maybe not then.
Without knowing what the press, the decisions in our hands, but we'll have to make it sight unseen.
So I think it's just a little bit of pitch correction and probably spreading it out as a bit of harmony. Not not quite sure why that's not duplicating. It should be. Oh, could be because it's in the submix. So, yeah, never mind. So, yeah, there's a bunch of processing going on in the vocals. I also did something which I never do, is I doubled the vocals in the verse. I used to do this all the time. I used to be so paranoid about not having a voice that was worth listening to when I was doing vocals that I would at least treble track every vocal line that I did, which tended to take a lot of time. And eventually I just got to the point of saying, I'll just do one vocal line and just wing it, which actually made me work a lot harder on my vocals and my voice. And I've ended up with a voice that I'm doing stuff with my voice now that I couldn't have done 5 years ago. Again, it's this thing of pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. And it's just what Mel says. Why do you consider your voice not worth listening to? You haven't heard some of my very early songs. Believe me, those songs are not seeing the light of day again with the vocal recordings that were on them at that time, because I couldn't sing. I just sounded whiny. I had no concept of diaphragm control. I probably didn't have much in the way of pitch either. So they really, really weren't very good. These days, yeah, I'll quite happily sing. Don't know if you get me in a microphone for karaoke or anything like that, but for this track, because it's kind of nodding towards Donald Fagen, IGY, Steely Dan, The Nightfly, all that sort of stuff. It's talking about the future, about wanting to live in your own orbital home next to the moon and stuff like that. So I wanted a different vibe to my vocals. I mean, you compare these vocals with the Tom Waits tribute on the last track, they're chalk and cheese. And if I just play the vocals, so there's three vocal tracks, no harmonies, just the same track.
We're making future plans without knowing what the present means.
So Mel says, what processing do you use on your voice? Okay, if my mouth's dry, I click. I do create quite a lot of mouth noise. I try not to, but I now have a singing style that means I'm right up against the mic to get the mic's proximity effect working for me, because that's why I use the SM7B, because it sounds great. If I don't use the SM7B, I'm using the Shure Super 55, which also has a very, very warm proximity effect when you get right up to it. So I get a lot of clicks and mouth noises and lip smacks and all the other things. So RX7's mouth declick gets rid of all those, and it will usually have got rid of a couple of hundred by the time I've gone through a track. And yes, it counts. Look at that, 163 clicks repaired, which is kind of worrying. So start with declick to get rid of the clicks, then compress the shit out of it. So I've got a loud kneeless compressor on that. So the ratio's 2.17 to 1. Then, as I'm an isotope fanboy, I use Nectar 3, which is the Swiss Army knife of vocal processing. So what have I got on here? I haven't actually got pitch correction turned on for this. Nectar 3 always drops pitch correction in first, but I tend not to use it and I've got Melodyne as well. I've only used Melodyne this year on fretless bass and one of the Spitfire Labs plugins that was a bit pitchy. And not used it other than that. So what have I got in this setup? I've got a gate, which again cuts out breath noise and squeaky chairs, and this chair is getting prodigiously squeaky. EQ, I always cut the bass and the treble off, and I kind of like the talking through a radio vocal style. Haven't used it much this year, but I used to use it a lot because it can actually hide a multitude of sins when you're not a particularly great singer like me. There is, of course, a de-esser, although I tend to have that fairly mellow, so it doesn't really cut out. I find sometimes it will actually cut out consonants, especially fricatives, and I suddenly think, I'm sure I sang that. Didn't sound like that when I sang it, and then realised it's the de-esser getting rid of it. Gates can also be problematic, so you don't want your gate set too sensitive. Then another EQ, then a compressor. There's a bit of Nectar 3's own reverb in here, and then when it drops out of Nectar 3, it goes into Ableton's vocal hall, which I just have really dialed down so you can barely notice it's there. So, I mean, that's a lot for me, 23%. I've usually got it in the teens. And it just gives a bit of air to the voice. Ryako Music says you have to be careful with DSs. You do, and it's odd because it's not something I'd realised until I started using them a bit more aggressively and thought, oh, that doesn't work. And DeFresh Doe says, my voice is so bad I don't use it in any of my projects and replaced it with a synthetic. You have some really interesting Vocaloid plugins, which I'd like to pick your brains about at some point, because the stuff that you're using sounds really great. Most of the stuff that I've heard sounds like Microsoft SAM. Although there is, and I still covet this, although there is no way I would ever justify A, buying it, or B, using it, is this. Vocaloid guitar pedal. Yeah, the Korg. So I'm a Korg fanboy. The Korg Miku Stomp. Now, are you aware of Hatsune Miku, the real life? So William Gibson fan people here in large amounts. So Hatsune Miku is a real life version of William Gibson's Idoru. She is a virtual Japanese pop star. She gives concerts and does dance routines with a live band and does not exist. Go onto YouTube, just Google Hatsune Miku, and it's insane. But Korg did, you see it says currently unavailable, which is probably just as well, let's face it. Korg did a tie-in with Hatsune Miku's creators to produce a guitar pedal. And as you can see, you get the input from the guitar, and then you can either program it to sing phrases, because you can connect it to a computer and actually program it to sing stuff, or it can just go nyan nyan nyan, or pa pa pa, or ah ah ah, or la la la, or whatever, all random. So yeah, it is even more bonkers than you are currently imagining it being. And as De French Doe says, I saw a demo of this pedal. It was so bad, but hilarious. And that is exactly the description. I mean, the Rob and the Captain, Andertons, reduced themselves to hysterics. So do watch the Andertons review, because they cannot keep straight faces when they're playing this thing. So yeah, Vocaloid. Does it sound human? No. It's Vocaloid stuff is its own genre. So Dufresto says, "Ooh, no, Ryako music." There are so there's Hatsune Miku. Is it Lennon? Who were the twins Vocaloids that did "Butterfly on My Shoulder" and stuff like that? It's like discovering something like K-pop exists, that you suddenly find there's this entire mad musical genre that you had no inkling was out there, and it's like, oh, this is, I do not understand this. Yeah, Vocaloid, Hatsune Miku, Lennon Ren, is it? Or is that the guy from Strictly Come Dancing? I don't know. I'm not really a cultural pundit. I just watch and laugh. DeFresto says the only one I know is Luca. We've got the internet here. I'm going to look it up. So Butterfly on Your Right Shoulder. I mean, that's a song title, right? Len, there we go. So we go to videos. Len and Rin Kagamine. So Purple Butterfly on Your Right Shoulder. So yeah, as you can see, there are people waving glow sticks around, but these two cartoon characters, and they use, you know, the old Pepper's Ghost where you have an angled sheet of glass and projectors, and the audience is here and they see the reflection on the glass of what's coming out of the projectors, and the rest of the real band is behind the glass. So it's the same technology that Gorillaz used for their live performances all those years ago. Yes, so check them out. It's mad, and obviously hugely popular and successful, and the audience knows all the words. Yeah, you will love it. Have dedicate a couple of hours, sit down with YouTube, and enjoy the weirdness. So from that, let's go back to this. So yeah, all the synths. So there's two sets of Fender Rhodes 73 stage piano. There's the Cakewalk bass guitar, which we've talked about. Array of Emotion says, at least Metalocalypse is a real band. Yeah, Neely Brosh, I follow on Twitter. Great shout out. Amazing guitarist. And she still reckons being in Metalocalypse is the best thing she's ever done. So Death Clock, you know. I must get the rest of that show. I've only got the first season on DVD. I need to get the rest of it. So what other synths have we got here? We have something that I've labelled Canada-ish. I wonder why. Boards of Canada. Any fans? Boards of Canada here? I think I've got pretty much everything that they have ever released. Oh, look, it's DX7 again. In fact, it's two DX7s. So this is Arturia's DX7 emulation. And this one, if it sounds Canada-ish, why does it sound Canada-ish? Why am I? Oh, I know why. It's because it's fade. It's gone past the fade, and even when it stops, Ableton remembers the volume is past the fade, so it won't play anything. No, that's obviously not. What have I done wrong? Oh, that's because I've soloed the vocals. Silly Chris. Okay, so Canada-ish synth in 3, 2, 1. And you can see why I'm obsessed with the DX7, can't you? It just so many gorgeous, very bell-like tones of frequency modulation synthesis, which is what the DX7 basically introduced. I mean, come on, you could just noodle along to that and release that as an ambient track, and people go, yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, so that's the Canada-ish patch. What's this one here? So this is, oh, it's Mellotron. I think this is again a bit spacey, Ond Martino. So this is called Winal Frontier. So it's the wine glasses patch. Do love a bit of Mellotron. Oh, it's nice in the lower registers, isn't it? It's got a very Philip Glass vibe. I don't know if you've ever watched the film Koyaanisqatsi, but it's one of my favourites, and the soundtrack album to Koyaanisqatsi I have. Well, the original version of it I bought twice, because the first CD that I bought when it came out suffered with CD rot, and it went gold and started skipping. And then I think I've now got either 3 or 4 different recordings of the Koyaanisqatsi soundtrack. Ryako Music says, dude, I totally feel that Philip Glass vibe. It's just gorgeous. So we've got the Dexed Ond Martino, which I mentioned earlier. And then, just for giggles, in the, well, it's a post-chorus rather than a pre-chorus. It's my other go-to fantastic synth that I will never, ever be able to afford in real life. And that's the ARP 2600. So, which is the workhorse of synth nerds everywhere. Has its own sequencer in it, and this patch is actually in the Analog Lab preset collection, which, I mean, you can mess around with the ARP 2600, but when you've got this patch, I just don't bother. It's just such a beautiful sound. So you'll notice that the Fender Rhodes tracks and also the Canada-ish tracks have notches cut out of them, because again, this is one of these tracks that I've been going back to, listening obsessively, and then going, yeah, that doesn't work, yeah, that bass note's wrong, and going back. So this is probably, I think I've revised this about 10 times since I wrote it on Tuesday, because I'll listen to it, mix it down, put it on my MP3 player, which is charging there. Got a little AGP. It's weird. I just a throwback. I have a separate player for my MP3 files rather than using my phone, and I've no idea why, other than the fact that this has a little slot for a micro SD card in it, and it will read 256 gigabyte micro SD cards. My phone doesn't have 256 gigabytes of memory, so 25 quid AGP Tech high resolution music player, and it does have gapless playback. Cost me 25 quid about 3 years ago, and it's more or less bomb-proof, although I've knackered the screen. But I chuck my headphones on and listen to playback on the MP3. And if the MP3 playback doesn't work, I come back in here and I tweak it again. And I was finding that the Fender Rhodes was tromping over that delicious first couple of notes that the ARP 2600 plays. So it's like, right, cut those out of the way, get rid of them, and it now works properly. So, yes, that was the second of 2 tracks that I wrote in a single day. And this one, as I say, is awaiting a very David Gilmour-ish guitar solo at the end of it. But I reckon I might try playing guitar at the weekend. Not going to do so either tomorrow. It'll probably be Sunday. But Difference Dose says 2 tracks in a day. Mate, 2 or 3 years ago, when was it? I wrote 4 songs on the last day of form. And 2 of them were mediocre. But a couple of them I was actually quite pleased with enough that I think they ended up in SoundCloud for a bit. So you can, I do occasionally go, and I think each one of those 4 songs took hour, maybe 90 minutes tops, because they were, it wasn't like this. It wasn't, full symphony orchestra stuff or multiple synths. It was drums, guitar, bass, and vocals, and maybe another line of vocals for the choruses, and that was it. In fact, I think Form It was probably one of those 4 songs, which is still on my SoundCloud. So check out Head First Only at SoundCloud. Let's just call it up, see if it is still there. There it is. So it is there. So it's on my SoundCloud track. So Head First Only at SoundCloud. Try Pro Unlimited? No thanks. It's SoundCloud have big problems with spam, and they have done for years. I used to have a Pro Unlimited account, which means you can basically just stuff anything onto your SoundCloud account and they'll store it and let you play it back. And if I put something on SoundCloud, I would get a comment within 15 minutes saying, check out how you can find more followers. And they'd say how good the track was. And the play count for the track would remain at 0. And I noticed somebody else on 5090 had linked to their SoundCloud page rather than embedding the SoundCloud player in their profile on 5090. And within half an hour of it being uploaded, there was one comment, and it was, buy new followers. So SoundCloud won't be getting any more of my money. And I've even posted links to a SoundCloud track on Twitter and have the replies in Twitter spammed by SoundCloud bots. Riaka Music says, God, I hate that stuff. The French Doge says, and the SoundCloud spammers, best in inverted commas thing on the internet. Yeah, it drives me. So I don't waste my time with SoundCloud anymore. I put my stuff on Bandcamp, which is doing nicely. I'd like to remind you that Bandcamp, once again, on Friday the 4th of September, will be waiving their cut of transactions on Bandcamp. So that means if you buy my stuff on Bandcamp on Friday the 4th of September, I get more of the money than I would normally do. Have to say, of course, PayPal still take their cut. Oh, yes. They're not going to do anything charitable, are they? Right, that's 2 of 2, but there's more. So this afternoon, I've been working on another track. So this is all my stack of stuff that isn't ready to be let out of the HFO studio yet. It requires additional instrumentation. Oh, Wobby, good evening. So, yeah, these are all kind of almost finished, but not quite. And this one is even more not finished than any of the other ones. So, why is it called Stochastic Policy? It's an observation of our glorious leaders' complete incompetence at being able to decide what the country's going to do. Margaret Thatcher famously said, "The lady's not for turning." Boris turns round so frequently, I'm surprised he even knows which way is up. So stochastic basically means random. And that was prompted by one of these free sound packs that I downloaded that I hadn't previously downloaded. It wasn't Spectral Textures. Oh no, this one was Stray Cats Collection by Max for Cats. And it has something called Stochastic Delay, which it's kind of a lucky dip because, as you can see, there are two little dice there, one that says resolution and one that says delay unit, and it does weird delays, I think is probably the best way of explaining it. And I know that's not explaining it at all, so why don't I just solo that track and play it you so you can hear what it's doing. Or not, as the case may be. Why can't you hear anything? Oh, post mixer, that's why. So it's very, very strange noises. There's a whole bunch. You can even throw spring reverb on it. So I've stopped playing and it's still going on because that's what it does. What I used as the bed for this track is the Korg M3, and it's got a lovely velocity orchestra patch. So it's, again, rather than just using Spitfire, Reacco Music sounds so weird. It is, and intentionally so, but so this was what I ended up with to start with on this track. So it's very aggressive. And if I play you the whole thing, you can see how the stochastic delay, and there's also a parallel delay here, which uses, I love Ableton's beat repeat, filter delay rather, especially moving 356. You end up with a groove just by dropping that filter delay onto something. But not content with having a groove from that, I then ping-ponged it, and that's 8 beats to the bar. So you end up with all sorts of interesting but quiet, odd delays happening in the background. No vocals on this yet. I'm not even sure if I'm going to do vocals or whether I'll just indulge my guitar playing proclivities when I can actually play guitar again. But shed loads of synths. So what have we got this time? We've got more Analog Lab, which is the preset collection of Arturia's V collection. And this, oh yeah, I'm using pigments on this. So there's bit pigments. What have we got here? Quite a lot of Ableton Live 10's own wavetable synthesizer. In fact, I think most of the rest of these are wavetable 10 synthesizers. And then the pack that was quite literally lighting up my disc overload like a Christmas tree was this. It's one of the Spectral Textures sounds. So this one's called Ferrous Ferrite. There we go. So it's Difference Dose says if you want to make it sound even weirder, you should use fracture or hysteresis by glitch. Right. Time out. I'm going to write that down because that is exactly the sort of thing that I love finding out. So that's glitch machines. Because I'm not sure that Twitch archives the chats. Although that was fracture and hysteresis. Great tip. Know how to start spelling hysteresis. I just can't stop. Okay, enough waffle. This is what this one sounds like at the moment. It's still got the count in for the drums. So here we go. So I was kind of too clever for my own good with this one, really, because what's happened is, although that idea of using the stochastic delay was really, really cool, and if I go back to it and just solo it, what I realised earlier this afternoon, but haven't actually done anything about it, is because it randomly alters where the repeats happen on the delay, it completely tramples over the rhythmic feel of the track. So it doesn't really feel tight enough, and which is one of the reasons why I dropped in the superior drummer on this to try and impose a timing on it. So much as it's, it gave the track its title, if I kill these two delays and play sort of verse 2 as it is, if I kill the delays, listen how much tighter the sound becomes, which is really irritating, but you learn these things. So I'm going to play it. I'll start playing it with all the delays doing their cool stuff, and then I'll switch them off. Mess it all up by turning them on again. It's really, it's annoying because I will find a way of using that stochastic delay in something, but clearly something that needs a strong beat ain't going to be it. This is also the first track that I've used the harp on the BBC Symphony Orchestra Discover, and it's gorgeous. It also makes my Ableton push light up in rather cool ways. So if I just solo it, there we go. Pretty lights. And once again, if you told me 6 months ago, oh yeah, you'll be writing pieces of music with harp pieces in it, it's like, really? But I really like it. And doubled with, or not doubled, but playing with the Celeste sounds particularly beautiful, I thought. So play the two together. just realised. Oh, it is doubling it. Yeah, it is still there. Good. Ryako Music says it sounds really nice pared down. It does. There used to be a television film company called Small Films in the UK that was run by Oliver Postgate and Peter Firmin. And all the music was, I think, recorded by Peter Firmin. And it tended to be very much in that sort of vein. So it'd be harps. There was lots of bassoons and things like that. Shows like Pogle's Wood or The Herbs or Noggin the Nog, which was the tale of a Norseman with his pet dragon and his sage who had a pet. I think it was supposed to be a cormorant called Graculus. But this is a long time ago. I really must try and find the Small films on DVD. I've got a couple of them. The one that everybody goes, oh, that was such a lovely show, Bagpuss. So with Professor Yaffle, the wooden bookend who was a green woodpecker, and a series of mice who would always play a song on the mouse organ. Yeah, great show. Still got the DVD of that downstairs somewhere. But Small film, I think my first experience of the bassoon was always the sort of noise of a Small Films theme tune. So check them out on YouTube. I'm sure they're on there. You can actually buy the DVDs. Glorious stuff. And music to die for. Very much in that sort of vein. Wobby says, love Bagpuss. See? If you're of a certain age in this country, Bagpuss will just turn people all misty-eyed and nostalgic, because that's what it was like. And here's a bit of trivia for you. The movie adaptation, although it was kind of sucky, of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, with Martin Freeman as Arthur Dent and Sam Rockwell as Zaphod Beeblebrox, without the extra head. What were you thinking? The voice of the book in the film is Stephen Fry. However, he was very nearly in second place behind Mr. Oliver Postgate, who had been asked to audition to be the book. And I would rather have lived in the alternative universe where Oliver Postgate was the book of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy instead of Stephen Fry. Much as Stephen Fry is lovely, Oliver Postgate was lovelier, and he had a much better voice. Ryaka Music says, I love sad Alan Rickman's Marvin. It was okay, but and bless him, he passed away last year as well. Stephen Moore was the archetypal Marvin. He was the Marvin in the original radio series. He was the Marvin in the original record. He was the voice of Marvin in the original TV show. And nobody else will ever be Marvin apart from Stephen Moore. Absolutely glorious performance. And I've yet to find a decent vocal processor. It's I have a feeling it's a patch on an Eventide H9000 harmonizer that they used with the dropping harmonics in the voice when he talks, and I have a feeling they would probably have had a technician at the BBC for each line turning down the repeat rate of the repeats for the harmonizer for Marvin's voice. But yes, glorious days. So that is Stochastic Policy. It is very untogether at the moment. I mean, I'm only 4 or 5 hours into working on it, and has no doubt become apparent, there are a lot of problems with it at the moment. So, I mean, strip down. Maybe just do it like a small films film and forget all the bombastic orchestra and everything else, and just have it really focusing on the harp and the celeste. Could be a way forward. I might have to consider that. But yeah, I think we're going to have to get rid of those delays, because they are not doing this any favors. So to give you, I mean, some idea, you can just change the whole quality of what you're listening to just by, and as I'm not using it, it doesn't really matter if I change the settings. So if I click these and change them, Riaka Music says, I think it muddles up the melody. Mel, I think it muddles up everything. Melody, timing, the whole works. It just doesn't work. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit delete there and delete there. So I don't know if you noticed as well, but the on the last track, the D for the disk access was flashing on and off horrendously. So I might go back and actually get rid of a few of those. Although, I mean, there's nothing frozen on here, so it's all rendering this out in real time. The piccolo is the only bit of woodwinds. There's quite a lot of brass in there. And yeah, I had to have the timpani again. So, oh, yeah, right, hang on. Good spot. Let's turn my picture. So that little D there on the other track, that was flashing on and off like Billy-O. So it's obviously working quite hard. And I think those will be the packs that I was using. But this one gets away without it, I think. And you can hear the Valhalla tail drifting off into the background there. So, yeah, that actually sounds a lot better without the main thing that was the force that was behind its creation in the first place, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I'll probably go. I'll go on the Mike Oldfield approach there. I think DeFrance Doge was saying I'll look him up. Young people. Mike Oldfield was my first and is probably still my biggest musical influence. The second LP I bought, and I'd have been 11 or 12, something like that, was Tubular Bells, which, if you're not familiar with Tubular Bells, man, are you in for a treat. This was a completely left field composition when it came out at the time, because what had happened was that Mike Oldfield had signed to Virgin Records, and Virgin Records' first ever release was Tubular Bells, which is probably why Richard Branson's as rich as he is now. Mike Oldfield was a sort of multi-instrumentalist folk guitarist, and I'm not exactly sure how it transpired, but he basically got the keys to a recording studio called The Manor back in the 70s. And when everybody else had gone home at The Manor, he was just allowed to get his tapes out and work on his pieces of music. And this was way before the days of DAWs and everything. This was 16, maybe even just 8 tracks, probably 16 tracks. And he would arrange for the Manor to hire various pieces of musical equipment, including aforesaid Tubular Bells, ostensibly for the sessions of bands who were turning up to actually pay to use the Manor during the day, but Mike would use them for his composition in the evenings. And Tubular Bells changed my life, because I listened to that and thought, right, that's one guy. And at the time, I just played piano because that's all we had in the house. We had a battered old acoustic guitar, which I've still got. But I heard him play piano, acoustic guitar, 2 slightly distorted guitars, organ, Farfisa organ. And of course, each piece of instrumentation on the record is introduced, because the record has a master of ceremonies who was a lovely, although very, very, very strange chap called Vivian Stanchel, who you may have heard of if you're a certain age and you remember a band called the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. And the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band also featured a songwriter, pianist, musician called Neil Innes, who was brave Sir Robin in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and an absolute genius songwriter. But Vivian Stanchel was I think he was a trumpet player, but he was also the vocalist in the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, and had the most upper class, cut glass English accent that you could hope to hear. And Mike Oldfield somehow persuaded him to turn up at the Manor and introduce each instrument as it appeared on the tape. And it's DeFranco says Tubular Bells, like the song in the horror movie. Yeah, Tubular Bells kind of did okay in the UK and didn't do much in the States until it was used in The Exorcist, at which point it rose to the top 5 in the UK and the US and stayed there. And it was still in the charts 5 years later. So it's an astonishing piece of work. And Mike went on. I mean, he's still producing stuff. I think he lives in Bermuda at the moment, but he's still recording stuff, still putting stuff out. Even better than Tubular Bells, my favourite was Omadorn, which is very much the sort of vibe of those floor tom drumming here. There's lots and lots of sort of tribal drumming in it. Absolutely transcendentally gorgeous piece of music. Well worth checking out. And Mike recently recorded what he called Return to Omadorn. So it was a revisitation of the themes from the original Omadorn, which came out, 75-ish, I think. Beautiful piece of music. And when the first time I played the sequel, Return to Omadorn, I was crying because Omadorn had that much connection with my musical sensibilities. Ryako Music says, was it like received pronunciation? Absolutely. Received pronunciation turned up to 11. And you have to remember that Mike has released sequels to Tubular Bells, if you can do sequels to an album. So Tubular Bells 2, I'm pretty sure the Master of Ceremonies for that was Alan Rickman. I get the order wrong because I know John Cleese did Master of Ceremonies for one of the albums. So they're an interesting listen. But if you want to hit the mother load, Tubular Bells obviously should be in your collection if you are at all interested in the processes and the motivations and the what music can be beyond the 3-minute pop single. Then Tubular Bells and Omadorn are both transcendentally beautiful pieces of music that you should really, really check out. They're gorgeous. I was going to mention that this is in the days before digital technology, remember? So it was magnetic tape on reel-to-reel tape recorder, and Mike would play one instrument, rewind the tape, play the whole thing again with another instrument ready and waiting, record that bit, rewind the tape, get the tin whistle, play through with that, rewind the tape, get the bagpipes, play through with those, rewind the tape. When he was recording Omadorn, he wore the tape through and he had to start again. Not going to happen these days, is it? De French Doe says, I saved Tubular Bells and Omadorn in my Watch for Later playlist. Thanks for the recommendation. My pleasure, sir. There are a number of bands that I could witter on about for hours, and quite frequently do, that have shaped the music that I play. Mike Oldfield would be top of the list. You would probably find bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd pretty much right behind him. They Might Be Giants is another one, and I was recommending They Might Be Giants to Mount Melody on 5090 earlier, who does a pretty mean pastiche of They Might Be Giants in the stuff that they're producing, and they'd never heard of TMBG at all. So when I said, "Oh, you sound like," they said, "Yeah, people have said that. I've never heard them." I was like, "What?" So, Ryako Music says regarding the tapes, analog. You couldn't get more analog than wearing a hole in a tape recording, could you? Sadly, my tape recorder musical equipment in here, I have an old Fostex X15 4-track cassette recorder that I used for the first two forms that I did, and for about 15 years before that. It's dead. I can put a tape in it and it'll play it, but if I hit rewind, nothing happens, which is kind of a drag. But anyway. So that's the third of my 3 tracks that I've come up with in the last 2 days, 3 days, I guess. So I'm, as I say, I'm not doing too badly at the moment. Let's just save that. And so this one, it needs a bit of work. I think Mel said, "Oh, that sounds nice pared down." I think that might actually be the way to go through it and just get rid of stuff. A bit like cutting the holes in the Sight Unseen track that let the synths shine through. But clearly that stochastic delay, nifty and cool and unusual though it is, does not play well with rhythmic or melodic music. So it's probably much, much more interesting in something like sound design, which will take us back to my movie trailer. So I think I might do some more movie scoring type stuff, because I haven't done many instrumentals this year, which is most unusual for me, mainly because my instrumentals usually revolve around the guitar and I haven't been playing guitar at all. But keep your fingers crossed, because I think I may actually be in a position where I can ditch the brace by the weekend. So that's the plan. What else? That's kind of it at the moment. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through chat to see if there's anything else I need to pick. Ryako Music says, "Take care of your elbow." Yeah, I will do. I also got some more. I got the 10% strength ibuprofen gel, that's the good stuff. I mean, that's even stronger than Voltarol. So that's helped tremendously. And I've just been massaging the joint as I put it in before I go to bed, and that's really helped. So I actually slept better last night than I have in weeks. Ryako Music says, "No more DIY." Yeah, until I need to. I'll get the guys over the road in to help me dismantle this thing next month when the new studio desk arrives. Woohoo! I'm really looking forward to that. Although timing wise, it will happen after 5090 closes. I'll still be streaming. This is my 16th Thursday night stream, which is just ridiculous. But I'm really glad you guys are still tuning in after 16 weeks, which is very flattering and very, very much appreciated. But with that, it's coming up on 5 to 10. So unless you guys have got any questions about the stuff that I've got here, or want to hear something else or anything else, I will call it a night, I think. So I shall just close down Ableton. So I have a bunch of television to watch, because I got the 4K UHD release of Flash Gordon arrived yesterday. So I will be watching that. And I also understand that the new season of Lucifer has dropped on Netflix. Woo! So it'll be good to catch up with those idiots again. They're one of the funniest and most entertaining shows on television. And Wobby says, "Thanks, Chris. I will get back to a bass track and hopefully have something to post tonight." Excellent. When you say bass, is this the big proper double bass thing? I really want to go on that at some point. Ryako Music says, "I'm tired AF." Yeah, me too. So with that, folks, Wobby says, nah, not for this. Ah, right, okay. With that, folks, I will just wish you a very pleasant night wherever you are in this crazy, crazy world with all sorts of strange and dangerous things going on. Shout out to my relatives in Louisiana at the moment who are getting hammered. I will wish you a pleasant evening. So stay well, stay safe, stay sane, and I'll see you next time.